To recommend I Barbecue for You. Pre-orders are suggested by calling 716-880-7667. I Barbecue for You, Buffalo's new barbecue destination.
Just move the coyotes. Don't do another expansion team.
Right? It would never crossed my mind. So somebody called the house when I was out mowing the grass.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Holy shit, your face is like purple.
Are you still up? Now in your fifth season, it's Buffalo After Dark.
All right, welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It is Wednesday night, September 11th. Glad to have all of you here. And of course, well, there's one thing we're celebrating today, and that is this guy's birthday. So, as we usually do in the Buffalo After Dark tradition, happy birthday, you old fuck.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Yeah, how's your week been?
Week has been good overall. Yes, today is September 11th of 2024. I am 32 today, and it's also a day September 11th, obviously the tragedy that took place around the world with 9/11, and it's been 23 years since the unfortunate event, and I'm sending out my prayers to all those families who have lost members in that terrible day. But the funny thing about 9/11 in general, now, and I'm not saying the whole thing was funny. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that people give me shit all the time for it because they say, oh, your birthday's on 9/11? Oh my God, that's such bad luck. I'm like, damn it, it's not my fault. I mean, I was born 9 years before the fucking thing even took place.
Right. No, I gotcha. But no, definitely for anyone who is watching who was affected with everything back then, and I still remember exactly where I was when it happened. But anyways, we certainly extend our thoughts and well wishes to everybody, and of course, it's one of those events in history we can't undo, but we can always move forward from it as well. And of course, one of the things we can do is for people that enjoy sports, we're here to talk about it. We're here to enjoy it, and what we'll do is we'll jump right into week one, so with the NFL. So, of course, if you want to join us, we are live on YouTube, and of course, we have our Facebook Live up as well. So give us a call if you want to chat, 929-205-6099. We'll get you on the air. And, of course, on YouTube, our Zoom information is in the chat. So, of course, feel free. Give us a shout. We're always happy to talk with you. So, that being said, week one of the NFL season came to a conclusion on Monday. And with everything that was going on, let's talk about the Bills first, because the Cardinals-Bills game, first half, I don't know what we were watching. Second half, we came around. But I will tell you, it was one ugly first half. And at least it worked out. Bills came back. They win 34-28. Josh Allen has a great day on the field, especially in the second half, doing what he does, hurdling players, running the ball. Yes, he did hurt his hand. He'll be fine for Thursday night. The Dolphins this coming week, I don't think they will be as good. But I want to say, man, I got smoked in our fantasy football league also because Marvin Harrison Jr. did absolutely nothing.
I actually did pretty good for myself in fantasy this week, so I'll give myself a little pat on the back just for that. But in general, though, as far as the Bills go, Josh Allen currently showed that even without Stephon Diggs, I thought the offense did a lot better in the second half of the game than they did in the first quarter on its own, because that first quarter was a disaster. And I get it, it's the first game of the regular season. Everybody's expecting big things from the Bills. But to me, it felt like that it should have been one of those games where they should have won by 11. And they were close to doing it too, but special teams got in their own way in the second half of the game. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter, and it was a much closer game than it was originally intended to be. But to give you an idea about Josh Allen, I think the dude as a whole, I think had 274 rushing yards, or no, I'm sorry, 274 total yards combined. Because I think if we're talking on average, he had 232 passing yards, and he had a completion rating of 78.26 with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. But he did have 1 turnover, which is that fumble in the first quarter. But I think since then, they've kind of regained their confidence because they really weren't sure what they were going to get. But I have to give credit to the Arizona Cardinals because they played a much better game than I think a lot of people intended to give them credit for.
Right. And I will say I did not expect them to come out the way that they did. I truly didn't expect it. I mean, Murray was playing pretty well. Harrison was shut down, but Arizona's run game is what kept them going, especially in the first half, and they were getting big chunks of yardage. I mean, there was no stopping them, and we had no answer for their offense.
You should have listened to me, you son of a bitch. I told you not to play Harrison, and you do it anyway.
Yeah, I also should have played Xavier Worthy, but I didn't think he was going to go off for almost 30 points.
Well, I could have told you that. And I mean, the fact that you even took Marvin Harrison Jr., despite the fact that he's a rookie, really says volume. But then again, I'm not here to debate that. I'm here just to
Right.
specifically say that you should have not played Marvin Harrison Jr. You should have played Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, although it is kind of funny, though, because going against Rob, who would have thought that I would have lost to Rob out of all people? Especially when his kicker had the most points out of anybody.
Well, I did beat Andy this week, so I'm kind of pleased with myself in that. And guess who I play this week?
Uh huh.
I play you.
Yes.
I play you in fantasy this week.
Yeah, get fucked.
Yeah, you nervous?
No, I've beaten you before.
Yeah, but I'll beat you again if I have to. So,
We'll see
but
what happens.
yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is the Bills defense came out sharp in the second half of the game. Gregory Russo was
Great
lights out.
game.
I think yeah,
Three
he did.
sacks.
3 sacks, including a fumble. So I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that. And if I remember correctly, because today is Wednesday, and this is the time of the week where they announce the players of the week thing.
Hmm.
I believe, if I remember correctly, Gregory Russo was actually nominated as the AFC's Defensive Player of the Week.
No, he got it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
So
he was nominated and he got the award. So
good for him. Yeah, and a great
yeah,
game on Sunday. I'll say that for
yeah,
sure. He
solid.
definitely had a great game. There was no doubt about that in my mind. But I do think that there are certain aspects where I think the Bills could have done better, moving
Hmm.
forward. I think the secondary could have been a little better. I think that the middle linebacker position, I know they're banged out without Matt Milano,
Right.
but I think that they could have been a lot better. Terrell, because let's be honest, Terrell Bernard was the one that was really dictating the entire defense, beside
Hmm.
with, Russo. I gotta say, Greg Russo played a great game. Von Miller played a
Yeah, he
great
had a
game.
sack. So he's
Yeah,
finally starting to come
exactly.
back into form.
So little slow, baby steps.
Hmm.
That's kind of how I said it, baby steps. And I know people were pissed last year, and you and I have talked about this.
Right.
Is we were saying last season that when Von Miller came back from his ACL injury, we were already assuming that, oh my God, this is the worst fucking contract the Bills could have possibly given out to him. And we were already mad. We were probably just frustrated that, he wasn't like 100% when he first came back. And he even came out before the preseason, or it was after, I don't remember. He said I absolutely regret playing last season, because he outright said, I was not myself last year, and I just felt it, even though people were urgent for me to play because of the pressure,
Right.
and I just didn't feel right about it. So at least he came out clean and said, listen, I should have not played last year.
Right. Which is all well and good. And he's finally starting to resemble what we've seen prior to the injury, which is a great thing. And I mean, here's another thing also. Of course, we talked a lot about Russo so far, but he is starting to emerge into that elite rusher, and that's what we're looking for. We definitely need that. So once Von is completely 100% healthy and he's back to form, and then of course you have Russo. I mean, that's lights out.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and then here's one of the other things I wanted to talk about. Remember in the first half, Osiris Torrance totally killed us in the red zone with that 15-yard
Jesus
face mask.
fucking Christ. Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like, dude, you have your hand on his mask for like 5 seconds. Of course, it's gonna be called every single damn time.
I mean, I would expect this from him last season if he was like a rookie, but he should be a little bit more disciplined this time around.
Right.
That's just me though, because I listen, I get it. It's part of the game. Linemen do stupid shit all the time. But you have a very good point. If it weren't for Osiris Torrance, then Josh Allen probably would have had 3 touchdowns that game.
Hmm.
And that's just generally speaking.
Yeah.
But because it was 15 yards, it was a lot harder for the team to bounce back from that penalty. But I think the following drive was where everything kind of just came back together.
Yeah.
So generally, though, Arizona, I thought a lot of people wrote off the Cardinals. I was one of the people that said, don't take them lightly. I know on record they're a bad team, but the biggest player that the Cardinals had aside Kyler Murray was Greg Dortch. Greg Dortch was all over the field. And that's in spite, going back to my comment about fantasy, is Marvin Harrison Jr. was hardly seen at all. You want to know what his highlight was? Waving down the field in the end zone.
Yep.
Bye, Mom. I'll see you later when I come home from school.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you had one job, Harrison Jr., and you failed.
You drafted the guy. So I'm just going to throw that out there, man.
Man. But anyways, there's a lot more football, of course, we could talk about, and one of the big things before we jump into what we're thinking about what's going to happen this tomorrow night, actually, with the Bills playing in Miami. Let's recap a little bit of the league. So, of course, the Steelers actually went 1-0, and Rob is happy because they actually beat the Falcons 18-10. And Boswell, if you had him in fantasy football, he actually scored you almost 30 points.
For that to happen is just astounding because of the fact that I later found out the main punter for the Steelers was injured and he's out for the entire year. So the Steelers had nobody else to go to at that time. So they said to Chris Boswell, "Can you punt, sir? Well, we know you're a great kicker, but can you please punt the fucking ball? Please, we're desperate here."
Yeah.
And Sherry's like, "Yeah, give me the ball. Let me see what I can do." And sure enough, he goes into the air and he's punting the ball like 3 or 4 times throughout the game. He's scoring 7 field goals. That dude has 23 points in fantasy. How often do you see that?
Yeah, hardly ever. And with that being said, our buddy Rob from Nickel City Crew has joined us. So welcome, Rob. How's it going?
He's muted again.
Fellas?
There you are. How's it going?
Hey, Rob, what's up?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
What's up,
Fellas,
Rob?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. What's up? I think his mute is crap. Or, yeah.
There you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. How's it going, man?
I think he's having issues.
All right. Yeah, Rob, if you want to call back in, it's no problem. What we'll do, let's go through some of the other games. So, of course, the Titans and the Bears. Well, the Bears ended up getting their first win of the season, and they actually won a home
And the
opener.
Titans blew it.
Yeah.
We actually, I was going to say real quick, Britt and I, for those of you who don't know, Britt and I resumed our seasonal show of Pickup Tuesdays. So if you want to hear my full impression about that game, feel free to check that episode out. It's available on Spotify only, nowhere else.
Yep. But the next game I want to talk about, this was the absolute laughing stock of the week. The Patriots actually beat the Bengals in Cincinnati, and they won 16-10. And all I can say is, God, the Bengals looked like ass.
I have so many questions.
Same here. One, is Gerard
I have
Mayo
so many
actually a decent
questions.
coach?
I have so many questions. Number 1, you have Joe Burrow. Number 2, you have Jamar Chase. Number 3, how the fuck did you lose Jacoby Brissett? How did you lose to the Patriots?
Right. When the Patriots are expected to be a bottom basement team in the entire league this year.
That's sad. How the fuck do you do that?
God. I have
God
no
almighty.
clue. I have no clue on that one. But yeah,
Oh my
that
God.
game was a disgrace.
Yeah, if you're a Bengals fan, I would probably put a paper bag over my head just because of how embarrassing that was. And not to mention, it gets worse. They play the Chiefs on Sunday.
Okay, so they're going to go 0-2 to start.
You know what? I have no faith. I honestly, as much as I can care less about the Bengals, and yes, we have been to Cincinnati last year. Not that
Yep.
it matters at this point. However, the team itself fucking sucks.
Right.
And the funny thing is, I was talking to a handful of people, and I don't think I've mentioned this to you. Maybe I have, but I definitely mentioned it at work, and I've mentioned it to Brett. Was people have asked me before the beginning of the year? They said, Bobby, if there's any team that you could point out, good or bad, who's going to be the most surprising team of them all? You know what my answer was?
What was that?
My answer at that time was the Bengals. And I said, you're going to see a huge drop of production from the Bengals. Like, yes, they have Joe Burrow. Yes, they have Jamar Chase. Yes, they have T. Higgins. But their running game is awful. Their O-line is always hurt. Their
Hmm.
defense has completely collapsed at this point. They don't have the weapons like they did 3 years ago when they went to that magical playoff run to the Super Bowl. They don't have that team anymore. It's just Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase pretty soon. Because T. Higgins, what's going to happen is T. Higgins is currently injured, but he doesn't want to be in Cincinnati.
Right.
Same
He'll
with
be
Trey
out.
Hendrickson.
Yeah.
They don't want to be there. It's very simple. And I have complained about the Bengals for many, many years. And I have always said that Mike Brown is one of the cheapest owners in the league. He does not want to pay his players. Yes, he paid Joe Burrow. That's because of the media pressure.
Hmm.
I honestly don't blame them. But if you're going to be a competitive Super Bowl team, you don't go around saying, yeah, you have nearly a $300 million quarterback and then not give him any extra weapons. Not to mention that Joe Burrow didn't even restructure his contract yet because his first year didn't kick off yet. So it's in the middle of it, I think, the first year of that massive deal. So the Bengals right now are in deep shit financially. They're not going to be able to maintain this team for very much longer. So to me, they might be a fringe playoff team, but I don't see them going any further than they
Yeah.
currently are right now.
Yeah,
I just don't.
they're gonna have to make a lot of changes over there, and it's gonna be a bloodbath for a while, more than likely.
They
Um,
don't have a choice.
yeah, I mean they're gonna be in cap hell is basically where we're at. But then,
Yeah.
to touch on a couple of the other games, I mean, the Battle of Florida was pretty close. Jaguars ended up losing to Dolphins 20-17, which actually was not a bad game. It really wasn't. But here's the biggest. But actually, there is one other big laughing stock that ended up happening, and if Adam was actually around, we know he would go off about this one. The Saints beat the Panthers 47-10.
I wouldn't call it a laughter talk. I would just be like, I feel bad for them. The Panthers have nothing.
Mhm.
So I feel bad for them.
Yeah, and we know Tepper sucks as an owner, so that's no surprise.
Yeah. And Bryce Harper is probably going to be traded pretty soon. Not if it's not during the season, it's probably going to be the offseason. Bryce Young, I think for most Panthers fans, it has gotten to a point where he was not the guy. And I remember when the Panthers drafted Bryce Young, Adam was telling me that he wanted CJ Stroud. And I
Hmm.
said, if I were you, that would probably be the best thing to do is get CJ Stroud. But look what happened now.
Yeah, he
You
goes
went
to
with the
Houston.
sexy pick.
Yeah,
Yeah, you went with the sexy pick in Bryce Young out of Alabama. Didn't work out too well. And then look what happened to CJ Stroud. He went, a young quarterback out of Ohio State, in which normally is a production of a school that does not develop good NFL
hmm,
quarterbacks normally.
yeah,
But CJ Stroud just happens to be the one lucky charm that got there and has instantly became a Super Bowl contender at this point, or
yeah.
a near fringe Super Bowl contender, I should
Right,
say.
definitely a solid playoff contender for sure. And Houston actually did the smart thing. They actually built an offense around C.J. Stroud. And they
Yeah.
actually retooled the defense. And now, when you look at the emergence of Nico Collins as a wide receiver, young guy, basically was his second, third year in the league, and he's putting up good numbers. And then, of course, now you trade for Diggs in the offseason. You sign him for a year. There you go. You're going to have more production, which actually he had a great game, by the way, also. But then, here's another one I have to laugh at. When are the Giants going to realize that Daniel Jones is not the man? Because, of course, they lost 28-6 in their home opener.
Oh God. Yeah, I gotta mention something about this game. I have friends who are Giants fans. As you know, I live in Long Island. I have a lot of friends who are Giants fans. And a lot of those people have said to me was the Giants suck. Daniel Jones is not the guy. And even if Daniel Jones was, a decent quarterback, he's clearly not. That dude is being paid 40 million guaranteed just this year alone. This year alone, 40 million with an opt-out. So Daniel Jones is basically paying for the money. The dude doesn't give a shit. They have no offensive line. They have no weapons outside of elite neighbors. Their
Mhm.
defense sucks. So the
Yeah.
the Giants as a whole are just a rotted mess. That's the thing about them.
Yeah, and I would say Brian Daboll, I say if he doesn't clean it up pretty quick, he's out.
I can't really blame it on Dable because, to be fair, he did take them to the playoffs 2 years ago.
True.
But I get it; it's a completely different situation. But this honestly falls on Joe Schoen because Schoen to me has been drafted god awful as of late. This is the guy that literally drafted freaking Evan Neal, who, by the way, went from a top 10 NFL draft pick a few years ago to a third string lineman. What does that tell you?
Yeah, it's pathetic. It's pathetic.
That's the point.
I mean, there is literally driving the team into the ground.
Well, like I said, Joe Schoen was brought in from Buffalo, as we all know. He was a great assistant general manager for the Bills. He worked with the cap a lot within finances, but then once he went to the Giants, he kind of just did his own thing.
Yep.
And keep in mind, he drafted Evan Neal. He also paid Daniel Jones that really shitty contract that they got.
Never done.
Yeah. And I cannot blame him for Kadarius Toney because he was not on the Giants at that point.
Right.
But I will say everybody else that they've done in the last couple of years, the only player worth a damn, in my opinion, that actually worked out in their favor is Kayvon Thibodeau.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a good addition to them. And then when you look at some of the other contests, also we'll kind of go through it a little bit because we're actually almost at the half hour. But the Seahawks came back to win against the Broncos 26-20. The Browns, of course, are the Browns. They lost to the Dallas Cowboys 33-17 right after CeeDee Lamb, and of course Dak ended up getting paid big time. And then,
if I'm a Browns fan, I would be embarrassed right now.
Yeah, I would too, because Deshaun Watson, Lord knows if he's going to be around for the entire season the way he's playing.
Did you see what happened with him lately?
Yeah, he sucks.
Well, no, we know that, but did you see what else happened to him?
More legal problems?
Yeah, he's being accused of sexual assault. Again.
Oh, nice. Yeah, on
that's
top
like
of
what,
the
number
30...
27?
Yeah, something like that. I was thinking in the 30s at this point.
Oh, God. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That you have more assault cases than you do playoff wins, or just wins in general.
Yeah, and he ended up having to settle all of those before he even went to the Browns. And then, and then on top of it, the Browns wasted all that draft picks on him.
And you know what's even worse? Is the Browns not only have traded all their draft picks for Deshaun Watson, there's no opt-out in that contract. And they're paying him $250 million guaranteed.
Jesus.
Yeah, imagine that. Having such a shit contract. You are now at the level of the worst quarterback in the league, and you're in a conversation with Daniel fucking Jones.
That's bad. That is bad.
No shit, Sherlock.
Right. and then we had a couple other games also. So the Commanders ended up losing to the Bucks in Tampa 37-20, and it was a really good Sunday night game though with the Lions and the Rams, where the Lions came back and they won in overtime 26-20. I gotta say, watching that specific game, the Rams look pretty good. Detroit's looking solid. They made some great additions this offseason, and that team simply knows how to win at this point. And Campbell's a great coach for them. He literally, once the Ford family decided, we're going to actually allow football people to run football things, you actually have good football.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
So, yeah, but no, a lot of respect to that team, though. I mean, they deserve it. And then, of course, Monday night, as in what this episode is called, the Jets are damn stupid because they end up losing 32-19 against the 49ers. And all I can say is, Aaron Rodgers, you might want to go back on that ayahuasca retreat because you absolutely were pitiful.
Welcome to the goddamn Jets. And in this episode of the goddamn Jets, we watched them get exposed on Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers. And Aaron Rodgers, on the one positive thing that actually happened in that game, is he did not die.
Yeah, and he didn't blow out his knee.
Yeah, that's the point. He didn't die. He kind of just was just out there. Oh, and we need to bring back Professor Aaron Rodgers because that guy is a piece of shit. And I think the fact that... Yeah, and the fact that he's in his ayahuasca retreatment right now, he's probably looking at himself saying, "Good evening, everybody. This is Professor Aaron Rodgers. I just got my ass kicked in front of the whole country in San Francisco. And I just want to let you know that I'm in my ayahuasca retreatment right now. And I just want to let you know, I might not be coming out of the closet for a little while, but luckily for us, we might be playing the Tennessee Titans on Sunday in Nashville. So if you just happen to see me, just please let me know in the future that I didn't even throw over 100 fucking passing yards in that goddamn game." And this is Professor Aaron Rodgers signing off.
Yeah.
Jesus
Oh
Christ.
man. Yeah, the Jets look bad. But then again, what do we
Um,
expect from them?
no, here's the issue, and I said this to you 2 years ago. I said when the Jets got Aaron Rodgers, they are instantly like wasting all their money and all their desperational talent. They have a good team on paper. It's
Hmm.
just that the team is being held hostage with Aaron Rodgers because Joe Douglas, and I've said this for years, is the Jets are being held hostage with their quarterback situation. I mean, how many times have we talked about Sam Darnold? How many times have we talked about Zach Wilson?
Yeah,
How many times have
plenty
we
of
now
times.
talked about Aaron Rodgers? It's literally like we've probably seen the New York Jets switch more quarterbacks than we actually seen the Buffalo Sabres make the playoffs in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
How does that even justify that?
yeah, that's pretty awful. Straight up.
It yeah, that is god awful. And the fact is, the Jets playing big in such a big market. Like, yeah, you have guys like Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, um, so on and so forth. You know,
Mhm.
they got talent. It's just they just don't know what to do with it. And of course, that bullheaded fuck, Nate Hackett, is the offensive coordinator. The only guy that was able to even make him relevant in the NFL to begin with is Aaron Rodgers. And now the guy is stuck with a geriatric 41-year-old to be
Right.
a quarterback. I mean, it's
And
not a good.
and on top of it, Hackett doesn't even know how to use the rest of the offense he has.
They don't even have a good running game at this point. And Brees Hall is a damn good running back.
Right. And they're not even productive. So basically, you're losing quality running back. You're losing the rest of your offense. Your wide receivers suck. Your tight ends suck. You can't even utilize the people you have properly. You're not going to win games.
Yeah, when you have to rely on Alan Lazard, of all people, to get you a touchdown in a game,
Oh,
you
sweet
got a
Jesus.
serious goddamn problem.
Yeah. And more than one.
Yeah, as into this episode of the goddamn Jets.
Yeah, exactly. And Rob actually ended up texting me too. He said he was having problems with his hands free in the car. So no worries, Rob. We can always have you on at any other point, and then we might even jump on your show at some point too. So we got that. Brad, our friend from Kentucky, is saying, "Holy crap, Rob Crippen! There's a name I haven't heard in years. How is it going?" So, little fun fact. So, Brad follows us from Kentucky. He used to be here in Buffalo. I've known Brad for over 20 plus years, just like I've known Rob for over 20 years. And we all went to the same school together. So, that's how we know each other. But good stuff. And then on top of that, let's go into a couple other things because, of course, we still need to talk about the Bills and the Dolphins coming up this week. But how about Tyreek Hill getting arrested only about a block away from the stadium? And now, one of the officers that arrested Tyreek Hill is on leave for apparently using excessive force.
Well, there's been a lot of controversy behind this, but we don't go into politics because a lot of politics has been brought into this conversation lately. But there have been moments where the cop was relieved from his duties. That's
Hmm.
one. And then the other one that came out was Tyreek Hill was allegedly giving the cops an attitude and he was struggling. And the dude went on CNN to bitch and moan about the cops saying, hey, we need to fire him because he hurt my feelings. Or, hey, he pulled me over because I was going over the speed limit in a speed limit area. So in this case, let's say where he was, I'm pretty sure the rule is when you're going into a limit is 25 to 30 miles per hour, right? So
Hmm.
at that point, that dude was probably going like 60, 80 miles per hour in a Maserati.
Yeah, of course you're going to be pulled out of the car.
Did I lose you again?
Your Wi-Fi
Yeah.
was acting all
I just
weird.
wasn't sure if you heard me or not.
Yeah, well,
Am I
you,
doing
you
okay
chopped
now?
the, yeah, you're good now. Yeah, so you mentioned with him being pulled out of the car, you mentioned like a slow speed limit, and then of course like being excessive in the speed limit. Of course, a lot of times a cop's gonna pull you over, and they're gonna pull you out of the car.
Well, just to repeat what I said because of the Wi-Fi issue, is like most stadiums across the league, I'm pretty sure, not just in football, but anywhere, is the speed limit is 15 to 20 miles per hour, especially when you're pulling up to a stadium. And if you have a car like that's something like exotic, like what Tyreek probably has, is if you're going 60, 80 miles per hour and you're giving yourself an attitude towards the cops and you're not complying to their rule, then that's a you thing, buddy. And for him to have the audacity to go on CNN and play victim, that's an ego thing, okay? That's a big ego thing for Tyreek to do that. And then the Dolphins made a big deal about it.
Mhm.
The league made a big deal about it, saying, "Oh, we need to go through sensitivity training." Like, dude, shut the fuck up. All right, you did this yourself, and you're putting your own actions on guys that probably do this for a living, 24/7. And the guy that got relieved from the Miami-Dade Police County Department turns out was a Bills fan.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. The guy that cuffed him was a Bills fan, and he got fired by the county.
Interesting. So here's the thing. I mean, we stay free of politics on the show. I mean, it's one of those things we don't want bringing into it. Are there times that people are social justice warriors? Of course. Are there bad cops out there? Of course there are. Are there really good cops out there? Of course there are. Basically, the biggest thing, if there's ever something that comes up against a cop, don't give attitude, even if they treat you like crap. Just deal with it in court or however you're going to deal with it that way. Don't deal with it at the roadside. That's probably the way I would definitely mention it. But anyways, although actually Brad makes a funny comment on here too, and I know exactly what he's referencing. So Brad says Tyreek should have watched Chris Rock. You ever see the skit on the Chris Rock show on HBO where it says what not to do with the police?
Oh, that thing?
Yeah, that was like over
I've
20
seen that
years ago.
years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew exactly where he was going with that too, and that was a funny skit. I remember watching that. That was a great show, by the way, back then.
Wasn't it like Saturday Night Live or something?
It was similar. It was like a half-hour show, and Chris Rock actually had some guests on there, but he also did some different skits, and one of them was what not to do with the police. And then basically what happened is they would do. Okay, this is the right way to handle it with a cop, and then of course they show what not to do, and then you get your ass whooped by the cops getting beat with the nightstick.
Well, there's that. Well, again, and then Tyreek tries to say, "Careful, man. I just got surgery on my knees." And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really like bringing politics into all this. Neither of us really don't want to. We used to do that when we first started, but since then we kind of faded away from it. But the point we're trying to make is if you're dealing with the police, they don't have time to hear this, I'm that mentality. They don't have time for that. They have
Right.
people to deal with and they have families to take care of. They got
Yep.
responsibilities. They're just doing their job. And if you ever get pulled over by a cop, you put your hands on the wheel, don't do anything. You respond with yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am, and you have yourself a good day. If you treat the cops right, they will treat you nicely as well. I promise you that. And the only reason I don't know that because my brother-in-law is actually a police officer in New York City, in Manhattan. So I know a thing or two about this type of stuff. I come from a police family, so I know the ins and out of it. My brother-in-law is a police officer. My great-grandfather was a police officer. I got a lot of police officers in my life. So, and I'm really friendly with a lot of cops in Nassau County. So I know a lot of these people will tell you the same thing I'm saying right now.
Right, and actually, Brad mentions the actual name of the skit was called How Not to Get Your Ass Kicked by the Police."
There you go.
So there it is. But of course, if you guys are joining us, we're past the halfway point of the show. But of course, welcome. You're able to give us a call in if you want to join 929-205-6099, and we are live both on Facebook and on our YouTube spot. And of course, if you ever want to watch an episode that you didn't have a chance to see, go to our Spotify page, and we have season 4 and we have season 5 up as well. So, with that being said, let's jump into Bills versus Miami because that's coming up tomorrow night. And then, of course, we'll round out the show with a little bit of hockey afterwards. But Bills and Miami, a couple big things that came out. There were some injuries that's going to be significant for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and one of the people that was injured that came on the injury report today was Raheem Mostert, and apparently he's dealing with a hamstring injury, so he's out. And then Devon Archain, it might be questionable going into tomorrow night. And for the Bills, Terry Johnson is not playing, and
Right.
Dwayne Smoot, I believe his name is not playing as well. Josh Allen was on the injury report, but they're saying he's good to go.
Yeah, he was
And the
cleared first thing.
Dolphins, yeah, and the Dolphins are also missing Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, which is one third of their defense.
Yeah,
So the Dolphins are probably more banged up right now than the Bills are.
yeah, 100%. I mean, Taron Johnson with the forearm, I mean, yeah, that hurts, but I mean, we were able to still make up for it in the meantime. But I will say, this will be a good matchup. It's a good test early on because, of course, with the Bills revamping a lot of their line, this is going to be that early season test that you need to show up and perform. And as long as we can utilize that run game early, we can get off to a quick start, and then, of course, as long as Kincaid and Dawson Knox actually decide to show up, instead of Kincaid being out there doing absolutely nothing like what we saw this past week, except for, oh, let's, like, trying to get the ref's attention, especially after certain plays. It's like, come on, utilize them. You're going to have to mix it up because right now the Dolphins are banged up on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I think at the end of the day, the Bills are in a very interesting spot because, they got out that big win over the Cardinals, and people are immediately saying that this could be a very good test for the Bills. What is there? I'm not saying that they're going to immediately win right away. I'm not saying that because it's football, anything can go.
Hmm.
However, a lot of people are doubting the Bills right now because of the offseason narrative saying Miami got better. I mean, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that all of a sudden the Dolphins were magically better than the Bills. And even if you look at the betting odds, I think if I read it correctly, I think MGM Bets had the Dolphins as a favorite by minus 130. Now, I don't do betting, but I know the difference between the odds of that in their favor. But right now, the Dolphins are the favorite to win the game, but I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, is the way I look at it because especially when you lose a running back, when you end up losing one of your wide receivers, when you end up losing part of your defense, I mean that puts a lot of holes in the armor, and that's one of the things that we can exploit. And the Bills, yeah, we're banged up, but not to the extent that Miami is at this point.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. And the funny thing about all that is, people are writing on the narrative that Dolphins are going to be somehow big better than the
Hmm.
Bills. I strongly disagree with this, only because I feel like, yeah, you had Jordan Poyer, but is he the same player as he was after 7 years
I don't
with
think
the
he
Bills?
is.
Is this the same guy?
Right.
Like it's a big challenge. So I think for Buffalo, they should be fine. I mean, taking advantage of the run game, man, because Bradley Chubb's not playing, Jalen Phillips is not playing, Jalen Ramsey is playing, so I'm not surprised by that. Jordan Poyer is probably going to play, so there's that.
Right.
But I do think I don't like to give up predictions, but I think the Bills are going to win that game. And if I come out and they say, "Oh, they lost," then okay, then you move on to Monday night.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's still going to be a fairly close game. I mean, if I were to throw a prediction out there, I would probably say 27-21, or actually
Okay,
20 or 28-21, I would think, with the Bills still taking it. But here's what I would say. James Cook, let him run up the field. Just
let
give
him
him the
cook.
ball, let him do it. Because he was getting some good yardage in the game this past weekend, so let him run.
Yeah.
Give him the rock.
So here's what I don't understand. How is it that the media is picking the Dolphins to beat the Bills, and that's coming from the same team, by the way, that blew a three-game lead into the division and gift wrapped the Bills the AFC East?
Yeah,
How the fuck is that even possible?
exactly. And they lost in the playoffs in the
Yeah,
first round.
that's true. And the year before that, they met in the playoffs,
Yeah,
and the Bills won that game. Now, people, and I've heard this argument so many times, is people have said that if Tua played in that game, the Dolphins probably would have won, just based on at the time with how the Bills played in that game, because it was like what 20 degrees or something like that, below zero
yeah, something
at that
crazy.
time.
Yeah, and that wasn't even the coldest game
Yeah,
that
I
week
remember.
because Kansas City was even colder.
Yeah, at that time. You mean this past playoffs or the one before that?
No, I think it was like the one before it because it was like minus 20, for us. And then at the same time, remember when Kansas City had that game and it was like minus 35 or something like that with the air temperature?
Yeah, not the playoff game this past year against Miami. Not that one. I'm talking about the one when they played Cincinnati in the playoffs, where they were so horrible and people just kind of rubbed off the Bills. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay, I think I know
Yeah,
where you're going
that
with it now.
playoff run.
Okay.
That was when they met the Dolphins. So at that point in time, I'm saying to myself, okay, well, if this is how they're going to want to play, then we'll play up to their standards. It's very simple. But
Hmm.
then again, I'm expecting Miami to come out flying. I really do, and I think they're just as motivated. But both teams are probably going to feel the same way as they have. The Bills beat the Cardinals by 6, and it took down to the very last second for the Dolphins to beat the Jaguars.
Yep. 100%. So we'll see what ends up going on with it, but it ought to be an interesting game altogether. And then what we'll do, let's move into one last thing actually with the NFL, and then we'll jump into hockey. But the NFL is committed to having more games internationally, which is kind of no surprise.
Yeah, they've been talking about this for a while. They were talking about moving games to Australia. They were talking about
Right.
doing like games in the Middle East and Asia, and they're really trying to go all over the place here. I think there was one where I read that they're trying to do one in China. They're trying to do another one in Japan. There's another one I've heard where they're trying to do one in not the UK, but not Germany, like France. I've heard they're trying to do. They're trying to do one obviously in Australia, even though it's not a big continent at
Hmm.
all. Um, there's a lot of movement. I've even heard they might do one in Ecuador, but I really don't know like what's gonna happen moving forward because the NFL is such a monopoly. They can do whatever the fuck they want.
Right.
But at that point, if they're that destined to put in like international games, I'm fine with growing it. But for some people, it's a big waste of time because
Yeah.
Roger Goodell wants to make it at least like 5 to 6 international games a year now.
Yeah, which is absolutely crazy because then you have teams that, I mean, already they have to do it, what, every 2, 3 years? They have to play an international game. So right now, I mean, the Bills did that last season. We don't have to worry about this go around. But at the same time, a lot of times if you're a home team, you're losing a home game out of it. Basically, you're losing home team advantage. So, I mean, I have no problem with them growing the sport. It's just it's almost like there needs to be a limit to how many games they're going to do internationally. And a lot of times, I would even advocate do it in the preseason. Don't do a regular season game.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but they're never going to do an international game during the playoffs because, well, who's going to do that?
Oh yeah,
Honestly,
no team will agree to that.
nobody will agree to that. I'm fine with it being in the regular season because that's like a once a year kind of thing. If you're on a specific team,
Hmm.
unless you're Jacksonville, that does
Right.
it twice a
The,
year.
yeah, and you're always going to the UK. You're playing in London, so
Well, because years and years and years ago, they were talking about speculation before the renovation to TIAA Bank Stadium
hmm,
was they were talking about moving the Jaguars from Jacksonville to make it London's team. And people were thinking Shad Khan was going to make it happen, but apparently
right.
that's not true anymore. And the renovation or whatever they're called,
Yeah, the renovation.
no, not renovations. The remedies. That's what it
Yeah.
was. The pictures that you send out when you show the vision of what you want to do in the future. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, TIA Bank Stadium, I mean, it's going to undergo a massive renovation, and they're going to add a roof to it. So that's one of the other things. It's going to be an open. It'll still be like an open air stadium, like SoFi is, but it's essentially a canopy. So what'll happen if there's lightning? Yeah, they're still going to have to delay the game per NFL rules, but it's going to get a major makeover, and there's actually talk with Jacksonville right now that they're going to actually have to play away for 1 or 2 seasons to allow for the work to be done. And that would probably happen in Orlando, where they would have them play over at Camping World Stadium or something like that. But the renovation, like the actual pictures of what they want to do, I mean, I've seen them, and it actually looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. But again, it kind of goes back to the whole Jacksonville thing with them relocating to London. But I
Hmm.
think now it's become more of a necessity for the NFL to do games in London. But if you're going to do it, don't constantly put the Jaguars there because that's just
Right.
borderline disrespectful to not just to the NFL, but to the city of Jacksonville because of the fact that you're actually I take that back. You're taking at least 2 games away from them each year, one
Hmm.
home, one road.
Right.
That's not fair. Because if everybody else has to do one and the Jags have to do multiple, How is that even fair?
It's
That's what I
not.
want to know.
It's not. And plus, with Jacksonville, I mean, they're going to be spending like over $1 billion in renovations, and SoFi Stadium costs like $5 billion to build. So, and when you look at the cost of renovations that Jacksonville is going to be spending versus the cost of Buffalo's new stadium, I mean, the Buffalo Bills are spending almost $2 billion on the new stadium. So, it's just one of those. I mean, if you're gonna do one game, just do one game, but don't force them to do like 2 games a year. I mean, that's just kind of crazy. So
Yeah, for the most part.
yeah, but you know what? Let's jump into some hockey because I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. So a couple of things we'll talk about. I mean, Adam Larson ended up getting extended, so that was definitely an interesting contract there. And then, of course, one of the big things that's going to be coming up, the paid tryouts, and there's some notable names on there.
Yeah, Kaylee Yamamoto went to Utah today. Pierre Edward Belmar went to Colorado, even though he already got one there. Um, there was Jared Tenorti, who originally signed with as a PTO with Calgary this past week. Tyson Berry got one as well. But the main one that I think a lot of people were interested in was Max Pacioretty got a PTO with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
That's an interesting one. And who
Yeah,
would have thought he would have to do a PTO?
well, I mean, I kind of feel bad for him because Patches is almost done with his career and he's been so good for so long.
Mhm.
But it's gotten to a point now where he doesn't really have much left in his body. It's like, you
Yeah,
kind of feel bad for him.
yeah. It's like you're down to that last quarter tank in the last quarter in the gas tank, and I mean he did a lot of good things for a lot of years, but it's almost like you got to know when to say when.
Sometimes that happens to all of us, where if you're a professional athlete, your body can only take so much and didn't work out that way. And
Right.
the funny thing is too, I want to mention real quick is as far as PTOs, there was reportedly one PTO that the Sabres were going to do, and that was with Philip Sedina. But then an hour after that claim came out that he signed with the Sabres and threw a PTO, his agent came out and said that never even happened, and they were talking to other teams, and then he went over to the KHL or the Swedish Hockey League. It was one of the two. I think it was the Swedish Hockey League. And people were just like, all right, well, it's whatever. Philip Zadina is a bust, and I really thought he was going to be good with the Red Wings for many, many years,
Hmm.
but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah. Sometimes it just doesn't pan out for whatever reason. I mean, and there could be many of them. I mean, it could be just the play on the ice, adjusting to the style of the team. It could be the teammates. I mean, sometimes you just don't mesh with them, and that happens. So, but with that being said, one of the fun things also before we jump into hockey season being right around the corner, because we're actually not too far off from the preseason, the Anaheim Ducks are in the news, and there are some interesting things coming out of that team right now.
Absolutely. The Ducks are one of those teams where it's like, yeah, you kind of expect them to be bad, but there has been a lot of speculation because we did talk about the Ducks over the summer when they brought back the Mighty Ducks as their primary
Hmm.
logo. But there has been some aspects that I think we should dive into because I think this could take it into effect down the road for two players for the trade deadline. So we're going to talk about that right now. And
Yeah.
by the way, before I get into it, March 7th has been set as the trade deadline date for 2025. So Friday, March 7th at 3 p.m.
All
So I
right.
should just
Good to
point that
know.
out real quick. Yeah, it's going to be fun. So the first player that's being brought up is Cam Fowler. And Cam Fowler and the Anaheim Ducks are exploring the idea of a possible trade. That's the first guy.
Right. And then of course John
So
Gibson.
yeah, John Gibson is looking for a solution and he wants a fresh start. And he's been linked now for God knows how
What's it
long.
been like 5 years at this point?
Something like that. But
It's been a long
it's
time.
yeah, it's gotten to a pretty decent point where it's like, well, you kind of have to just, adjust to what you have. But the issue is Gibson has been around with the Ducks for a long time, but the issue is his contract, and he's got maybe about 6 more years on his current deal,
Hmm.
and he's making about, I want to say, 10 million at this point with his age, which is a very long term deal, but he's just on a shitty team. That's really what it is.
Right. And
And
and plus Gibson wanting the amount of money that he wants, which
yeah, I
he's
mean,
past his prime.
I wouldn't say he's past his prime. I would say he's still capable of it, but it's just again, I just feel like that, at his age, he's like 30, 31 years old. It just I feel like that he's at a point where he wants to be on a Stanley Cup contender. He wants to win a cup. But again, it goes back to the issue. It's not the NFL where you can just restructure contracts. Once you're stuck with it, you're stuck with it.
Right.
Unless you buy him out, of course. But um, in Anaheim's case, they want to get assets for Gibson, but nobody's budging. New Jersey was brought up, Buffalo was brought up at one point, but I don't know. There's really nobody else out there that's right now available for him to take. Now, the only team logically that I could see taking him are the Bruins. That's if they can't get Jeremy Swayman signed.
Hmm. Right, and the Bruins have some room, so I mean they can easily work with it. They may have to finagle a couple things with the cap, but he would definitely have a shot to go for a cup.
Yeah, but at that point in time, I probably would consider it as well. You know.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then, of course, one of the big things as we get into the start of hockey season, preseason's right around the corner. So there's going to be some interesting things that we see with the teams. Obviously, Utah is going to be their inaugural season. Sorry, Arizona. You did everything you could. And Gary Bettman even tried to help you keep the Arizona Coyotes, but he failed. And, of course, that land auction didn't work out either. So it's like, sorry, Arizona. You had the team for over 20 years. You didn't support them for over 20 years. You deserve to lose them to Utah as part of it. And we've gone on forever and ever and ever about that whole deal. But no, it'll be interesting to see the Utah Hockey Club actually get started. And then one of the big things that's going to happen with the Maple Leafs, obviously, is Matthews is the captain now.
Yeah, Rado Gudez, I think, definitely deserves to be the captain. But I do think, though, that with that team, it just feels like they needed some sort of leadership. And I think it makes the most sense to have him be the captain with Rado Gudez. But at that point, you look at him and you say, well, he's been around for a long time. You might as well just give him the captaincy. Now, I wouldn't call this as a way of saying desperation. It's probably just because Trevor Zegras is not a guarantee to stay. That's number one. Carter Gauthier just got here back in what, February?
Hmm.
And Troy Terry. I would say Troy Terry is the only other player, unless you're not trading Cam Fowler, which we've already said he's probably going to get traded. But again, these things are so unpredictable that you have no idea what's going to happen. And again, the Ducks, I don't expect them to make the playoffs. I do think that they're getting better, but it's going to take a while for them to get there.
Right. And then one thing that's going to be interesting to watch with San Jose is Macklin Celebrini this year. And and I'm not sure if you saw this, but guess who Celebrini is going to be living with?
Sidney Crosby.
No, he's living with Joe
Oh,
Thornton.
okay, that's not terrible. Why did I say Sidney Crosby?
I don't know, unless you're thinking about the possible non-extension.
Yeah, you know what it was is that I was I saw the pictures recently, and Max and Celebrini was having actually has a picture with him and Sidney Crosby, and I looked at it. I'm like, why the fuck is Sidney Crosby planted in my head all of a sudden?
Right, right. But when NHL.com ended up talking to Macklin Celebrini, he basically ends up saying, talking about living with Joe Thornton, he thinks it's a perfect situation because Thornton dealt with the same thing a little while back, and then he also thinks to learn from Thornton, to just hear his advice, his lessons, and his wisdom is super important. So that's actually not a bad situation. And actually now speaking of Crosby, he actually when he first came into the league as a rookie, he actually lived with Mario Lemieux for the first year.
Well, yeah, I mean it's Super Mario. I mean, why the hell would you not? When
Right.
you're a franchise player. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
Lemieux is the Penguins basically.
I'm pretty sure he owns like a small majority of the ownership there. I know
Right.
Fenway Sports owns them, but I'm pretty sure that Mario Lemieux at least owned a good portion of the team,
Yeah.
even when Ron Burkle was the owner.
Right. I think he still has a stake in the team. And of course, if anyone's ever gone to PPG Paints Arena, there is that statue of Mario Lemieux outside one of the entranceways.
See, Mario Lemieux is such a legend in Pittsburgh. Like, it's almost undeniable what you would do with Sidney Crosby
Hmm.
because of the fact that both Crosby and Lemieux are successful NHL
Yep.
players. it's gotten to a point now where both of them are going to be champions forever in Pittsburgh. They're probably one of the two of the most iconic, legends in Pittsburgh. You're in a conversation with Jack Lambert. You're in a conversation with Roberto Clemente. You're in a conversation with, um, me Joe Green. Things like that.
Mhm.
But those two guys alone are just like bread and butter.
Oh
And
yeah.
for Crosby to do that at that young age, to be with Mario Lemieux, that's a hell of an accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, in Pittsburgh, watch, they will probably do a Sidney Crosby statue at PPG Paints Arena once he decides to hang up the skates. Roberto Clemente, he has a bridge named after him right outside of PNC Park. So they definitely do pay tribute to their players down there, and I mean they are very much a hardcore sports city, similar to what we have here in Buffalo. And I've been there and I've lived there for a short period of time too. So it's one of those things. It's not uncommon, especially on a Sunday, where you're going into a grocery store and you see the terrible towel all over the place, and you're seeing Steelers gear and everything. They live and breathe and die sports in that city. Whether it's the Penguins, whether it's the Steelers, or even to a certain extent now that they've got Paul Skeens and Aroldis Chapman, the Pirates are actually somewhat legitimate finally.
I think so.
Yeah, but no, that part is definitely interesting. And then on top of it, some of the other things that's going to be interesting, of course, the Blackhawks prospect tournament. Levshunov is actually going to miss the tournament, so he's got a pretty good injury there. And then one of the big things we ended up talking about last week when we ended up, or actually this past Saturday when we kicked off season 5, is the whole Johnny Gaudreau situation, and then of course his brother passing away, and they had the funeral this past week. So, definitely thoughts of the family there because that was a big loss for hockey in general.
Yeah.
And then one thing that came out today is Larson signed a 4-year extension, $21 million contract with the Kraken, which we're going to be
There you
seeing
go.
him next month.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so excited. Oh, and speaking of deaths, I do want to mention one real quick thing, real quick, and I think it's respectful we do it.
Yeah.
Is we actually have two people we want to send our condolences to. Obviously, Johnny Gaudreau is one, but we already did that.
Mhm.
The other one I want to talk about real quick is Ed Kranepool, who's one of the original Mets. I think he is
Mhm.
the first captain to ever play for the New York Mets. He was the first ever captain, and he was part of that 1969 World Series team in with the Mets in '69, and he was a hell of a player. So he rest in peace. And I think the big one that a lot of people have been talking about briefly is, James Earl
Oh
Jones.
yeah.
Obviously for the yeah, James Earl Jones, man. He died peacefully at the age of 93. He was one of the greatest, if not the most iconic voice of all time. Being Darth Vader, being Mufasa. I
Mhm.
mean, how much more? Oh, and of
Judging
course,
of the
Mr. Myrtle
roles.
from The Sandlot. Yeah, that
Yep.
was a great movie.
Yeah, and he was even the voice of Bell Atlantic and Verizon for a while too. So I remember those days. It's like, "Welcome to Bell Atlantic." I remember that whole saying that he had for a
That
while.
that deep voice, man, was so badass. I'm
It
sorry.
was. It was. Yeah, may he
I
rest in
mean,
peace. He was definitely a legend.
he turned Darth Vader to life. He made Darth Vader into a symbol in Hollywood
He did. He did.
just with that voice.
Yeah, it was a big iconic actor when it came to that. So may he rest in peace on that. And then one other thing, and we'll wrap up is of course with the Sabres coming up, we're gonna do some deep dives into them. But the KeyBank Center announced today that the renovations in Phase 1 are complete. So the roof is done, the scoreboard is done, it's up and running, and I will be seeing that October 10th for the home opener.
Ah, there you go. I'm gonna
And
be
everyone's bitching that they won't have the smoke coming out of the scoreboard like they used to. But then I have to tell fans, it's like whether it was the current Sabres logo or the goat head that used to shoot smoke out when we scored, it hasn't done that for at least 5 seasons.
Yeah, it
We're
sounds
not
about
missing
right.
anything.
No, you're really not. It's
And
not like
yeah, instead, and they
I mean,
can't do it anyways because they can't put the fog machine underneath the scoreboard because now you have screens underneath the scoreboard, so you're not having to look up like this when you're in like the first 15 rows.
right. I agree with you 100%.
So, well, and plus now with the new board, they can actually change it to be a lot more like giving the Bandits a home advantage versus having Sabres logos appear on the Bandits scoreboard. So, but no, it'll be a nice upgrade. And the Sabres released some of the specs. Obviously, it's double the size of what we used to have. It's a 27 by 43 screen, curved corners, so everything can be one screen at one time. And they also mentioned there's two screens underneath. So if you're sitting along the penalty box or sitting on the coaching bench, same thing. You can see up underneath, which will be pretty cool. And it's going to be the highest definition scoreboard in all of New York State, because they went from a old ass 10 millimeter LED to state of the art 4 millimeter, which is the new standard in a lot of buildings, and hell, even half the NHL doesn't even have that yet. And then on top of it, basically from there, clearer replays, and should be a better system overall because they're actually using the same graphics setup that the Bills use. So that'll be a lot better. That means they can actually do stuff. And now it's up to them to actually put on not only in-game entertainment, but we need to have a good team on the ice. And this is where I know there's been some talk about Lindy Ruff. Can he still do it? And this is one of those things. I want them to go hard ass balls to the wall in training camp and basically let everybody earn their spot. And none of this crap kumbaya country club stuff that we used to see. It's get down to business, win games. You win games, people will come back. It's that simple.
It's very straightforward, honestly. I mean, the fact that, everybody's tired of the same mediocrity. Lindy Ruff, I'm sure, as again, I've said it 100 times before, is I did not care for the hire because I'm not a fan of second term coaches. But if he's able to orchestrate a decent training camp with these kids and fully accommodate to them and to their strength and actually be decent in October and November, they got a fighting chance to make the playoffs, because
Right.
those first 2 months in any season is going to be incredibly critical. And this is no different at all. You
Yeah.
can't have a shitty October and expect a decent November. You need to have both a very good October and a very good November in order to have any sort of conversation to make the playoffs.
Yeah. Got to win games early, and you got to set the tone early. And that's the way that you build that confidence. And right now, when we saw what was happening the last couple seasons, where you're either on or you're not, and you're running into like 5, 6+ game losing streaks, and then you win a couple, and then you're losing like another 5 games or so. You can't keep doing that, because you're never gonna get yourself out of that hole, especially when it comes towards February and March every season when the games really count. So you got to get off to a quick start. And here's the other thing also. I can say, compared to what we've had with other coaches, compared to what we had with Don Granato, compared to what we had with, well, Ralph Kruger's a freaking moron, compared to what we had with Don Granato, even Ted Nolan to an extent, you got to have a physical team, and you got to be able to balance that with the skill. And here's the thing. We have good skilled players on this team. There's no question about that. But we have to get the physicality back. And one of the big things, even if I were to have my dad on the show at some point, he could tell you some stories about playing hockey back in the 70s when he was actually good enough to be with the Rochester Americans. He decided not to go to the AHL, but it was something where he would tell you, if you, even regardless of what type of team you had, you got to be able to take the hits, and you got to be able to play physical. And that's the style of game that he played, and that's what he loved. That's why he has a crap ton of broken bones and scars and all this stuff that he had to deal with. But you got to be physical. None of this, oh, let's just let them skate around and not do anything. No, it's like, if you're going to lack in one area, if you're going to lack on the skilled players, at least beat the hell out of them on the ice, and at least let them send a message that way that, hey, you come into our house, you're going to get beat up. That's what you do.
Exactly. And the thing is that the Sabres haven't been like that for a while, where they don't have that physical team. They kind of just, like you were saying, they were skating around all the time. And it doesn't justify it, because you have to go to a point where you have to get better from here. You can't just say, okay, we're skating and we only shoot the puck when we ever feel like it. That is not only unprofessional as a professional hockey team, but you also have to prove that you could belong with the big boys. You can't just, you can't, you know, sugarcoat this by any means.
Right.
You can't. And the fact that all the other coaches prior to that were doing this to an extent, it felt like an enigma with the Sabres because it's been 14 years since
Hmm.
they've made the playoffs. And in retrospective, they haven't made the playoffs since I was a senior in high school. So to say that to miss the playoffs for all this time and then all of a sudden get back in because of that mentality they've had for all these years is inexcusable. Like, yeah, you know how much damage that this ownership has done with this team for so long? Because look at the broken relationship with Jack Eichel. Look at the
Hmm.
broken relationship with Robin Leonard. Look at the broken relationship with Evander Kane. Look at the broken relationship with Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah.
The other big thing too, and I've always talked about this
Even
in the
Steve Ott
past.
would be one. Ryan Miller is another one.
Yeah, they wasted prime years of Ryan Miller's career because they were incompetent and they didn't have any foundation to build around him.
Hmm.
Maybe in his early year when, he was on the 05-06 team or 06-07 when he was in his sophomore year and his rookie year, those teams were actually good. Those teams were fun to watch. Now, back after that, they still had Vanek, they still had Pominville, they still had Miller. Well, they were good, but they weren't great. It's not like when they had Breer and Drury, where they had a capable system where they were able to have a decent top six, and then they were able to put the puck in the net. Nowadays, they have talent, but they just don't know what to do with it. That's
Right.
that's the big issue I have with it.
Yeah, and that's going to be the big test to see what happens this season because I mean we've got a great top six. Now it's just a matter of what do we do with these guys, and that's going to be key. If we can solve that early on, especially in October, or hell, if we can even solve it in the first preseason games that we have this year, then okay, that sets the tone, and that'll at least set an identity for this club, and that's what we need to see. So, one of the things that'll be interesting is Thursday, October 10th, when I'm there in person and get to see them actually play live with Lindy Ruff's first home game since coming back. It's going to be a fun night, and I am predicting it will be a sellout. I am hoping that he's going to light a fire under them and get them to perform. And that's one of the things. We know that individually, these players can play. Now it's just getting them to function as a team.
Exactly.
So with that,
Exactly.
yeah, that's gonna be the big thing. But it will be cool to see that new board in person too. So, which I will say, we did get a little bit of a mention. They didn't mention us by name, but the Sabres did mention the board design that we did here with Horns and Hooves, where basically they had the cross swords and everything. So, yeah, at least it's cool to get a little bit of a mention. But the screens that we did propose are the same size as what they use, so at least that's a plus.
It's like a consolation prize.
Yeah, 27 by 43. That ain't bad. Puts us in
Not
the top
terrible at all.
12 in the league. It's bigger than what, and you guys had the biggest scoreboard at UBS until now, so
But at least the Islanders can use it during the playoffs.
fuck you.
Yeah.
But I will say, I am still glad that I did see a game in the old barn back in 2019 before they shut that down.
Yeah, and you
So
know
that
what?
was cool.
I went to a New York Riptide lacrosse game in March with Rob Hazu, and for those of you who have never seen that episode of Road to 32, go for it. Go for it. It's not
Yep.
really my best work because I don't give a shit about lacrosse. I just went because I know Rob wanted to go, so I said, all right, let's go,
Yeah.
whatever. And then I did. So would I ever do it again? Probably not. Even if you said, "Hey, let's go to a Bandits game," at least I could say when I went to a Riptide game when they were here, I could at least say it was just nothing more than just copyright music and just
Hmm.
little kids screaming. I don't
Right.
like how is that fun for me?
Yeah, I gotcha. I mean, I've been to a band's game before. I mean, it is actually pretty cool to go. I mean, it's just I haven't gone to them regularly, but they are fun
Is it
though.
like what I was describing when you go to a Bandits game?
Definitely a lot of music and different things that they do in game. But with the Buffalo Bandits, though, we actually almost sell out most of the games, which is unusual in lacrosse.
Well, I mean, even though I know nothing about lacrosse, I'm pretty sure you guys have the most successful lacrosse team in the league.
Yeah, it is one of the most successful of all time, actually, with the number of
That's what I
championships that
mean.
they've
Because
had. So
don't they have like 5 or 6
at
championships?
least,
Yeah, that's what I mean. That it's bad enough when
yeah,
the
they won last. Yeah,
Bandits.
they won a championship this past season.
They have more championships than the Bills and Sabres in championship
Hmm.
appearances themselves combined.
And they're younger than both teams.
That's the
I mean, they
point.
only started in the early
But
90s.
and they have so many championships already.
Yeah. In fact, I remember when they won this past season, I was at Hofbrauhaus drinking a liter of beer and on a table
There
when
you
they
go.
won.
Now
So
are now are their games televised like locally, or do you have to use like a different streaming service or whatever?
this past season, they finally started televising them. So before you'd
Really?
actually have to go to a game, or you'd have to find a stream for it, or you'd have to watch through like I think like the National Lacrosse League's site. But now they actually are on a local channel for all the games, which is actually good. They should have been doing this all this time.
That's probably why the Riptide were so bad, is because the games were never televised locally. You had to find them on ESPN Plus in order
Right.
to get the games.
Yeah, and actually, our friend Brad ended up mentioning four championships, and apparently they're available through ESPN Plus on Hulu.
Well, there's that.
Yep. But no, they played them on the local CW station here in Buffalo this past season, which was actually pretty cool to see. So at least they're moving up in the world, which is
Yeah.
good. But But with that being said, I think we went a little over an hour, which is not bad. Of course, everyone who jumped in and who is on the live chat, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. Our friend Rob, glad to see that you got the win for being up here, making that round trip, 1,300 miles from Charlotte to here and back for the home opener. At least you got to see a win, which is good. And who knows? Maybe we'll jump on your show tomorrow night with Nickel City Crew. But we did link your show to our page as well. So if you guys want to take a look, he's on Thursday nights at 6. So definitely check it out. But in the meantime, it's another week. So um, and just to think, we're only a month away from Seattle at this point.
Yeah, so just a quick reminder before we go is I'm going to be leaving for Run to 32 2 Fridays from now. I'm going to Baltimore to see the Bills take on the Ravens at MT&T Bank Stadium. I'm so excited for that game. And then we have under what, 5 weeks till we go to
Yeah,
Seattle?
yeah, just about.
Five or
So
6 weeks left to go. God damn.
yeah, it's not far. Well, we know one thing: our Airbnb is fully paid because I just dropped over $1,000 on that last night for the second and final payment. So it's kind
Hell
of
yeah.
funny. They only accepted like 270 up front, and then we had to do the balance after that. I'm like, all right, well that's fine. So it worked out. I just made sure that what we all threw into it, or just put it aside. So yeah, in fact, actually, here we are on the Delta app, 41 days.
There you go.
So yes, and I did spring out for Comfort Plus because I want the extra 4 inches of legroom. So, well, it's only going to be
Absolutely.
about a 5-hour flight. Of course, I want the extra legroom and the
Without a
free
doubt.
and the free stuff. So it's all good. But that being said, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll see you next Wednesday. Check out Nickel City Crew tomorrow night on YouTube as well. And of course, as always, take care of yourselves and each other. And we will see you soon.
Peace, guys.